sidetracked to all things franchising. We provide essential resources for anyone in the franchising world. Let's get into it.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Tracer podcast. Today I've got Michael Hutchins from Authority Brands talking about 1 hour heating and air conditioning. This is a super exciting franchise. The numbers are out of control and they're part of a big group of brands called Authority Brands that brings a lot of benefits to the franchisees. So without further ado, Michael, I'll let you kind of step in, introduce yourself, and then let's start talking about the franchise.
Sounds good. Joshua, thank you for having me today. And my name again is Michael Hutchins, and I am responsible for the growth of the 1 hour heating and air brand across the country.
Very cool. Awesome. And Michael, before we get into the franchise, do you want to give just a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. I am an industry veteran, been in the industry for over 20 years, both as kind of an independent producer and then someone who's developed and led multiple teams. I've had responsibilities at a single time for, 10 brands in 2 different countries. But again, currently, I'm overseeing the growth of the 1 hour brand across the United States.
Very cool. Thank you for that. So let's dive into it then. Can you just, in a few words, describe 1 hour heating and air?
Sure. 1 hour heating and air. We are the market leader, the #1 residential HVAC company in the country. We've been franchising this brand now for 20 years and currently have over 385 locations across the United States.
Awesome. And then let's talk a little bit about the customer, right? So you said residential, but let's go a little deeper. Is it homeowners? Is it mostly people who are renting it out to other people? Like how would you define your target market?
Sure. So again, we are residential heating and cooling, but our owners also do light commercial. It's the same size equipment. So strip malls, restaurants, a church, something like that. Our owners also service those needs. But our customer is really the homeowner, someone who flips a switch, something isn't working properly, and they want to get it rectified. But we also service apartment buildings, condominiums, townhomes. Really the only type of residential that we wouldn't service would be high rises. There's no 1 hour crane, so we're not in downtown center city locations up on rooftops with that large type of equipment.
Very cool. So basically the equipment, because it's similar across most homes and commercial, small commercial, you guys can do pretty much anything.
That's correct. I mean, there's different size equipment depending on the square footage of the home or that business, but there's a range, and we can easily service up to 10,000 square foot spaces with a single unit, and some, they may need more than one, but as long as it can be remedied with, the size of equipment that we have, we can perform that work.
Cool. So what's the split there between residential and commercial?
Most of our business comes from residential, and then the commercial is really a referral. So the homeowner, you've been out there and they own a restaurant, they own a strip mall, they're a pastor, they have a church. So all of our marketing is around the homeowner. So most of our business is residential. But I do have some owners that, get really involved with commercial, and, they'll be doing new construction, housing projects, things like that. But that is a small percentage of our ownership base that wants to go in and really kind of create a separate commercial division.
Interesting. So that's definitely down the line, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the pathway to profitability out of the gate is to focus on 4 appointments a day per vehicle, full retail, preventative maintenance, service repairs, and replacements of equipment that, has reached the end of its life cycle.
Very cool. And so, you're saying those things and it sounds, similar to a lot of other HVAC, right, businesses. So what's special about this franchise? Why have you grown to be the biggest in the country?
That's a great question. And there are some up and comers now within the HVAC industry space. 1 hour, again, we're #1. We're the market leader. Our model has been successfully replicated hundreds of times already across the country. And I think one of the biggest differentiators is our training program, Success Academy. It's award-winning. It mirrors that of any accredited trade school. In order for owners in this industry to grow, they need to be able to add more technicians so that they can service more customers each and every day. And 1 hour has a great advantage in recruitment and retention with Success Academy. Technicians are classified level 1, level 2, depending on where they are in their career. So for recruitment, once someone gets on to a 1 hour team, they're able to further their careers now without going to outside trade schools and spending their own money on tuition. Again, great recruitment and retention tool. But it's also, Success Academy also allows our owners to recruit apprentice level employees and hire for attitude. So they, for example, they can take someone with 0 industry experience who is looking for a career. 30 days, they can be a new maintenance technician, 3-4 months, a new service and repair technician. In a year, they can be doing full-on replacements of entire home systems. So that's a big differentiator and allows our owners to expand their teams that much more rapidly.
Okay, got it. So kind of what I'm hearing is that as long as you're spending the money on marketing, you've got jobs coming in. But what's holding other people back is they can't build a big enough team. But you all have basically figured that out with the training program.
That's correct. I mean, spending dollars on marketing and then having to tell people that you can't come out for 2 weeks, it doesn't work in this industry. It's a demand business. If you can't see them, they're going to call someone else. So you need to have the capacity. That is extremely important. When someone calls and they get an appointment, more than likely they go on with the rest of their day. So it's important to be able to meet those needs when they call.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've lived in Florida, now I'm in Denver, and if somebody told me either in the winter in Denver or the summer in Florida, they're gonna be there in 2 weeks, I'd be like, just don't bother. Like, why'd you even pick up the phone? I'd be mad at them for wasting my time. So I hear that. Okay, very cool. And so before going further, right, let's talk about the one big kind of overarching question, which is like the values of the system and like who you're really looking for that aligns with those values and aligns with, has the skills that's needed to be a good franchisee.
Sure. So, there is a culture with every business. And, during the discovery process, which usually takes about 5 weeks, absolutely. Does someone have the financial wherewithal to be set up for success in starting a new 1 hour? But then we have a great group of owners within our system, and we get together monthly town hall meetings. I was just at our national conference in Dallas last month. All of our owners have their own protected territories. They all openly share best practices. Everyone really is growing together. So it's important that someone is going to fit into that culture. We have a lot of locations. I have a lot of owners that have different owners that have territories that are adjacent to one another. Now, all of the marketing is done by zip code. So our call center, everything is routed to the appropriate owner. But, sometimes, people move, whatever it may be. So integrity is important. I do not tolerate infringement. So, we have our protected borders and everyone needs to respect those. So that's important, when you're coming into our system, that you're going to be, part of the franchise family. So I look at that, and that's extremely important to me.
Very cool. So integrity and willing to kind of be part of a team, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And as far as key attributes for an owner, what I'm looking for, most of the people that I work with are not from this industry. They're entrepreneurs and they like 1 hour because it's an essential service. They also like the scalability and a variety of other reasons. So that is not a key attribute for success, a background in the industry. One, we kind of touched on it, is, following the system. It's simple, but I emphasize it right from the very beginning. When our 1 hour GPS is telling new owners to go left, like, please do not go right, follow the system. And then at the end of the day, and we talked about it with recruitment and Success Academy, this business, what it's really about for owners is building a team and creating a culture. So if someone is going to come in and be an owner operator, they need to have that coaching mentality. They need to understand where their people are. If they're a level 1 technician, for example, you have a team meeting. I'm a new technician, relatively new. Michael, you've been with us for 6 months doing maintenance calls. Customers are responding well to you. Let's get you into some more classes through 1 hour. 3-4 months from now, you can be doing service repair calls. It's more money for you. That's the type of environment that you want to have. Take care of your people, and they absolutely will take care of you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I actually am a veteran, spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, and it sounds very similar, right? Where it's like, okay, hey, Lance Corporal, like I want you to get promoted, but you got to do these classes, right? So like, let me know when the classes are done, right? Here's everything you need. So that way we can get you promoted and get you making more money, right? Like you got to take care of the guys, right? It's kind of what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, it is definitely a common denominator. We have a lot of successful veteran owners, also veterans on our team of technicians. In fact, we are very proactive in helping our owners build their teams. Last year, we spent $700,000 in our partnership with the various military branches and Career Plug, placing veterans with transferable skills all across the country. And it's a great partnership for a lot of reasons. But last month, we had 5,500 applications from veterans trained up in the military in HVAC who were looking for a job. So
Wow.
absolutely, they come following the system is like second nature, and absolutely understand the value of team building.
Very cool. And I mean, you've already hit on two things that I hear a lot from other franchise owners and other franchisors, that the biggest problem is hiring and retaining. And it sounds like you guys kind of have those two things already taken care of for the franchisees, which is amazing.
Yes, sir. I have
Awesome.
not had one location with 1 hour that has not had their team recruited, trained up, and ready to go at the end of an owner's 120 days of onboarding.
Wow. That is awesome. And that's a perfect kind of segue. Because I always ask at this point, like, how do you support? So we talked about who's a good franchisee, and then how do you get them to, that launch to be a good business owner, right? So let's talk about that 120 days. And what does that look like?
Sure. So the 120 days of onboarding, I call it Sure Start. And everything that needs to take place in order to open on time, on budget, will take place during that 120 days. Starts off with an introduction to either Robin or Whitley on my team. They're really the quarterbacks of that Sure Start. Ordering vehicles, getting preferred pricing set up with all the local suppliers, having the software systems installed, everyone trained up on that. But it also includes marketing. And then Megan Boyd and Megan Little are our Sure Start marketing coaches. They're going to analyze that particular territory and then come up with the marketing strategy for that new owner. So they'll look at, the age of the homes. So homes that may be 10 years and older, they'll specifically target revitalizer campaigns. They're going to be setting up social media, Google, Facebook. We take care of all of the heavy lifting for all of our owners. We're very good at making the phone ring. Just had a call with, onboarding team on this past Tuesday. 85% of our new owners are generating revenue within the first 2 weeks. 40% are generating revenue even prior to their grand opening. So, we're very good at making the phone ring. Marketing is established. And then we have franchise coaches that work with our owners also through that 120 days and then on an ongoing basis in every aspect of running and growing their business. So we offer full support, and it never ends.
Yeah. So finding the equipment at preferred prices, finding employees that are trained up and ready to run, finding people to answer the phones or to call you. So I guess the only other question is, do they need a flex space, right?
Well, you need warehouse space. About 1,000 square feet is appropriate when you start this business. Marketing works much better when you can put a pin in, a physical address. People search HVAC near me. 1 hour, we show up on the first page near the top of the list. But you also need a space for additional truck inventory. When our technicians go out, service repair calls, they have what they need on the vehicles in order to perform the job while they're there after they diagnose the issue. But it's a finite supply. So once a week, they're back at the warehouse, re-upping that inventory. So you need space for that. You need to have those weekly team meetings. Those are important. It's part of the culture. And then also when you do replacements, the homeowners do not want the old equipment. So you bring it back to the warehouse, and then you'll keep it there until the recycling company comes and pays you for it and takes it away. And there's great money in recycling with the old HVAC equipment.
Nice. Nice. So there you go. So, and it shouldn't be that hard to find 1,000 square feet of warehouse, right?
No, and they'll outgrow that. So typically I advise owners sign a 3-year short-term renewable lease. And then as their team expands, they'll grow into a larger space. But about 1,000 square feet, it's not a showroom. Rents are much lower than retail locations. And I assist with that, looking leases over, finding the spaces for our owners, making sure it's the, appropriate space and priced where it needs to be for this business.
Awesome. So then it really is help in all aspects, right? Finding the location, finding the equipment and trucks, finding the employees, finding the customers, right? And guys are just there steering the ship and making sure that the jobs are being done properly and on time.
That's correct. Owners, managers, they're there to ensure that the team has what it needs to accomplish the goal.
Very cool. And let's talk about training as well from a technical standpoint, right? So I know they're learning how to run the business. Do they need to learn how to do any of these projects? Are they in the truck to start off with? What does that look like?
No, so they do not need to have the technical skills in order to be successful. Now, just like an apprentice employee, if an owner wants to put themselves through Success Academy, they could acquire everything that they would need. They could repair equipment, replace equipment. Most owners are not looking to do that. They don't want to work in the business. They want to work on the business. They're focused on being like the conduit to our corporate marketing training teams, recruiting, adding additional technicians, networking with their peer group of other owners, sharing best practices. It is not frequent that an owner that has no background in this industry wants to acquire the skills to go out and do the jobs themselves. But if they wanted to, they absolutely could.
Got it. So they're really not in the business, like you said. So that's another very attractive part of this. And then what about do you all take late night calls like 2 a.m.? Like, does that happen? Hey, my air conditioning's out. I mean, are they just sleeping through it? Like, what is that?
So good question. So 1 hour, we are open 24/7. That doesn't mean the owners or the managers are, have to stay awake that time. We have a call center that backs up our owners. No customer for 1 hour ever goes to voicemail. If the owner is speaking with me, it'll route to our call center. After hours, late night, it routes to the call center. They share our scheduling platform so they can book the appointment on behalf of that owner. Now, there are not a lot of 3 o'clock in the morning emergency service calls, but if someone did want someone to come out, technicians in this industry are on call and they would be dispatched to that homeowner. Typically, they realize there's an issue. They can book on the web page. They can book an appointment from their smartphone. If they did call the number, the call center would pick up. Most of the time, they just would want that, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning is good enough. I have an appointment and I'll go back to sleep.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, that's another like very positive thing that I hear people, when they look at restoration, they're like, I don't want to field 2 a.m. calls, so it's
different. If the water is gushing down the stairs, maybe tomorrow is too late, but with heating and cooling, most of the time, if they have an appointment, that'll.
Cool. Very cool. All right. So then let's talk a little bit about the relationship, right? And it's kind of interesting, I think, because recently Authority Brands acquired 1 Hour Heating and Air. So has there been a change in kind of what that looks like? Is it more? Is it less? I saw in the FTD, I think Authority Brands spent an extra $22 million between 2022 and 2023 on franchisee support. So maybe it's better, right? So can you just talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure. So Apex private equity company bought us probably about 6 years ago. It's been all positive. It's been great. We've got additional resources. We expanded our team. My team is pretty good at what they do. We've been, growing with successful new owners year after year, but we don't want the level of support, to decrease. So as we grow, we need to add, additional staff so that the owner's experience remains the same. And, our parent company has been terrific. Anytime we needed to add more people, we've been able to do that. Just adding, software updates, everything just staying current, world class. We've had those financial resources in order to stay top of class.
Awesome. And then So how many franchisees there are, right? Because I know some of these guys own 4 and 5 and 10 territories, right? So how many franchisees do you have?
So currently owners, we have about 100 and about 400 locations. And so,
Okay.
very rarely I allow people to start with 1 or 2 locations, and then they can grow as large as they would like from there. Most common, people go on to have 3 to 5. That's kind of the sweet spot, and they can run those from one physical warehouse. But we do have owners that are wired to want to take over the world. I have owners with over 20 territories, one that has almost 40 now, and they just continue to grow. Owners, I have an owner in Texas who's got about a dozen territories there. He went to Phoenix. He's built up about another dozen there, and then has another one in Las Vegas. So once someone gets going with us, it's very easy to replicate the system and manage it remotely, even if it's in a different state.
That's awesome. And so the reason, well, we're going to get to all that, but the reason I asked that, so about 100 owners, how many support, how many, like at the corporate level that's supporting the franchisees? What's that number?
Just direct, like on our, the marketing, the franchise coaches, purchasing group. I mean, I think on Tuesday's call, like that support team we had, and it's bigger than this, but like the direct people is 26 currently.
Okay. So, I mean, 1 to 4, right? That's pretty crazy from like a proportion of support staff to franchisees. So that's really good. So, I figured it was something like that, right? So I know we didn't talk about that beforehand, but I figured it was a good risk to ask.
No, fair question.
Okay. So about 1 to 4. Awesome. And then let's talk about like what they do, right? So you said marketing, you said vendor support. So can you talk a little bit about like all the different departments you have on the support staff?
Sure. So, like 4 buckets, like, marketing. We already talked about that. Finance, knowing your numbers. So our team, there's daily management reports that are sent out. We look at P&Ls with our owners, just guiding them. Most of them, like I said, are new to this industry, but it's coaching, but making sure that they're on track. Like any issues are identified and corrected early, before they become a bigger issue. The purchasing group, Buymax, we have preferred pricing in place for anything that an owner needs to buy in order to run this business. And in fact, we run regular reports to ensure that our owners are taking full advantage of everything that they have available to them. We just finished up one for an owner in Texas. He did $8 million last year in revenue. He saved $600,000. He was
Wow.
$600,000 more profitable buying everything that he needs in order to run his business because of his affiliation with 1 Hour. So
That's awesome.
it's a great, we're $2 billion of purchasing power, and that translates into substantial discounts and rebates for our owners, driving additional profitability.
And then your royalties are like 6%, right?
2 buckets for ongoing fees. So yes, royalties is one. That's 6% of gross revenue paid back to us monthly. And then there's also the brand fund, which is 1.5%. So total 7.5% monthly. And the brand fund is not a profit center. Every dollar collected goes back out supporting all of our owners nationally, regionally, and locally. An example of where that money spent is the partnership with the military and Career Plug. That's $700,000 that benefits all of our owners. That came out of our brand fund.
So just doing some quick math here. That guy basically saved what he paid in marketing and royalties, the $8 million, $600K.
Absolutely.
So,
you look at, the savings, offsets, really, what it costs to be part of the franchise family, and you have all of that support.
Yeah. So really most people are like, oh, the royalties get me the support, but here it's getting you like, it's getting tangible financial benefits as well, which is really cool.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Awesome. Alrighty. So then let's talk about the growth of the system, right? As well as kind of the financials here. So how many franchisees do you bring on a year?
Last year, I brought on 31 new locations. 27 were not from the industry. This year so far, I'm probably looking at, some were similar. I mean, I look at, we just finished up the first quarter and I'm on pace, because I'm selective on who we let in. I want people to do well and go on and add additional territories, but be happy with their choice to become part of 1 hour. So it'll probably be about the same amount this year. It's been pretty, I'd say that number, we've been, within 1 or 2 of that over the last 4 years.
Yes. I mean, so that means what I see is that's 2 or 3 people per training class, right? So that's very focused training and support, getting these guys started, right? You're not one of these brands that are bringing on, 50 people a month or something. So this is, I like that. I think that's a good approach. And so let's say from signing to grand opening, what's that timeline look like?
Sure. So again, 5 weeks after they meet me initially for them to collect all of the information to make an educated decision. And then once they sign their franchise agreement, 120 days later, they will be out servicing customers within their respective territory.
Awesome. So 120 days. Perfect. And then as far as the growth goes, are franchisees, those guys who have 12, 20, 40, are they buying other franchisees, or are they all kind of like de novo locations?
So people will start to do tuck-in acquisitions. Now, it's not the primary path, but like the owner near me, I live in Florida. He started off with a single territory and built that one up to about 5 million. Then he expanded to about 5, 6 territories, became the largest HVAC contractor in the Panhandle. He grew up in Alabama, but he knew the 1 hour system well. So he went in and he bought a small HVAC company in and around Birmingham, and then expanded additional territories around that. So, they will take the vehicles, the phone number, the customers, and do a tuck-in acquisition and fold it into 1 hour. But most of the growth comes from just adding additional territories. They get bigger, they hire technicians that maybe live outside their territory. Now their vehicles are driving around in an area that they don't currently own. They're getting new customers there, and then they add that territory and then begin to aggressively market to it. And then it just kind of keeps on expanding from there.
Got it. Very cool. Okay. So it's mostly new, but there are some independent purchases that are converting.
That's correct.
Okay. And then what about when it's time to they want to exit, right? Are they exiting to PE? Are they exiting to each other? Are they exiting to new franchisees? What does that look like?
So all three. So I have some owners that, they've been doing it for 20 years and they have no succession plan and this is their retirement. So, most of the time, something like that, and this would be, someone maybe in the 1 to 5 territory. It's not big enough to attract private equity, but most of the time another owner will buy out that location. They already know 1 hour. All they need to know is the revenue, and they know what drops to the bottom line. So that'll sell internally. Private equity is a big fan of 1 hour. I mean, just in the last 3 years, I had one owner sell out to private equity for 108 million, another sell for about 40 million. So you need to get, 9, 10 and above territories to attract private equity, but they're like I said, they're a big fan of 1 hour.
Since those were the private equity, I don't know if you can talk about it or not, but like, do you know what the revenue and the multiple was on the EBITDA for those?
I don't know. I know what the number was. I don't have that with me right now because I don't manage those transactions. So I don't want to misspeak and not give accurate information.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want misinformation getting spread here. Okay. So there is PE, there is the ability for big exits, there's the ability for smaller exits, which is really nice. And I call that out because there's franchisors I talk to where it's like, hey, if you want to sell this, you're probably gonna have to like chop off your territories individually because there's nobody to buy it that's gonna, give you $2 million for it, $10 million for it. Right. And this is the opposite case for this.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. And then let's talk a little bit more in the numbers. So just say how much is per van doing and how many technicians do you have per van, if you have those numbers?
So there are KPIs. We measure everything. The numbers that I can share are only the ones that are within our franchise disclosure document. So I can share gross revenue numbers. Last year, our number one owner did over 47 million in revenue. System-wide, the average revenue per owner was 4.4 million, but we do measure revenue per vehicle. That could be a service repair vehicle. It could be a replacement vehicle. We look at how many calls are coming into the office on a daily basis, like what's their conversion rate. We even have our training team listen in on those calls to provide coaching. But for someone to get kind of per truck or any, margins and things like that, that would take place during the validation stage of our sales process, because I do want everyone to speak with existing owners. So again, it's not just about the financial strength, but I want to make sure that they understand what a day in a life is, also the returns, the margins and things like that. And they'll be able to speak with as many owners as they would like to during that validation process. And they'll be able to get from owners what those owners are doing per vehicle on an annual basis collectively and so on.
Good to go. And for, the listeners, validation is what we call speaking to owners, because you're validating that it's a good franchise. And it's like I said, it's much more than just the numbers. And it's these guys, you'll hear it's difficult to find people who are going to be less truthful, I would say, than franchisees on these calls, because they don't want people who are going to bring the brand down, right? So they're going to give it to you exactly how it is, because they know you're either going to say, I love this, and you're going to do a great job, or you're like, this isn't for me. And they don't want you in the brand, bring the name down if it's not for you. Cool. Okay. And then you have a kind of an interesting option for recurring revenue that I didn't really even know existed in this. Could you talk about that a little?
Sure. So there's 3 revenue streams for 1 hour. First one is recurring revenue, which is great for any business owner. You have money coming in automatically every month. Our owners accomplish this with our monthly service package we call Comfort Club. And it's pretty simple. Homeowners will send in a monthly subscription, and in exchange, they receive 2 service maintenance calls a year, priority placement when they need to book an appointment, as well as 15% off any large repair or replacement. Our owners do well with this. We have a 33% initial subscription rate when it is offered to a homeowner for the first time. 85% of our members renew annually. And as far as revenue, it's also very strong. I have owners all across the country with 14 homeowners in their respective territories sending in their monthly subscriptions, and $1 million or a little more than $1 million of their total revenue is attributed back to just the Comfort Club. And then our owners also, service and repair work is another revenue source, as well as the replacements and installations for new equipment.
That's amazing. I mean, $1 million of just knowing that, hey, I just got to go out a couple times a year. That's fantastic. Okay, very cool. And then let's talk about the territories, right? So how big are the territories, and how do you what other demographics are you looking inside of them?
Sure. So I create the territories equitably for all of our owners. I will not approve a territory under 100,000 in population. I know statistically what size you need to have a successful self-sufficient territory, but I create them by zip codes, and I do not divide zip codes up for marketing purposes. So they never land exactly, at 100,000. But I also look at income levels. I want to make sure that incomes are high enough that owners are going to drive revenue from all 3 sources, that people have the incomes where Comfort Club is not only just a good idea, they have the budget to subscribe, and that I'm confident that they're maintaining their homes properly. And then I also look at the number of houses, because the house is really the customer. And I want to make sure that new owners have the ability to grow their business from that additional base of homeowners in that territory before they would need to add another territory to continue to expand. So I look at those. I look at rents, the warehouse spaces. The territory may appear great, but maybe we need to modify it slightly, because you can save substantial money, if we change the territory to include, because the warehouse has to be in the territory. So I'll look at where the office is going to be set up and where it's priced appropriately, and then build maybe around that, include the other areas, but also include an area where they can set up their headquarters for a good price.
Very cool. It's a very holistic approach, right? It's not just 1 or 2 KPIs.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. Okay. And then what about, so getting started here, again, going back to that, what certifications does an owner need? And if they don't have it, how do you guys help them start?
Sure. So only 6 or 7 states in the country do not have a state level licensing requirement for HVAC. It doesn't mean that technicians in those states are not qualified. There just is no license at the state level for the owner. The other states, you need a license. And again, most of the people I work with do not have one in their back pocket when we first meet, but they'll need one in order to open. New owners can get that license one of two ways initially. They either hire someone with a license and they can use that one if they would like, but we wouldn't know that until they're on the 1 hour team and we begin recruitment. So I will have a qualifier for their particular state in place prior to their even signing the franchise agreement, because I know they need that and I want to make sure they have everything they need in order to open. If they get their team recruited and they do not need the license that I have, the money in the budget that was set aside for that can be used for something else. And they do not have to use any one license indefinitely. If they would like, after a certain amount of practical experience as the owner in their state, they themselves can sit and take the test and acquire their own license.
Okay, very cool. So you guys have a way to either help them find someone on the team that has it, or you'll sponsor them or whatever it's called, so they can use it to get going. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And then what about, is there any other traits or any other experience or any other, you mentioned veterans that really kind of lend themselves to being a great owner?
Integrate this business into the community. I mean, again, we're very good at making the phone ring, but owners that, go over, above and beyond what we do from a marketing and integrating the business into the local community, I see, additional results from those owners. So examples would be like where I live, the owner's got a sign up in the local high school baseball outfield. Around Halloween, I had a lot of owners sending me pictures of vehicles decorated, parked at churches, schools, trunk or treat. I have an owner that, waives the monthly preventative maintenance, $19.95 a month, and for his territory for veterans and first responders. I have had owners contribute to food banks, homeless shelters. I always advise new owners to find something like that at the local level, participate. If it's a sign or they need our support in order to make it happen, we'd be happy to do it. But go out and identify something that you can that you would like to do to become a bigger part of the community as far as your business. Though that's important.
Okay, got it. So it's being able to manage the team, be able to handle the operations, and being willing to integrate yourself in some part of the community.
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the good stuff, what to look for. Can you talk about some of what are some failures and why did they fail? Like, I know, it's a very small number. I looked in the FDD, it's very small. It's like 2 or 3% or something, right? Why are these people failing? And what can someone learn, be like, oh, maybe this isn't for me?
Okay, so great question. Again, I'm selective on who I let in, but these are all independently owned businesses. So I emphasize following the system, which I talked about earlier. There's different budgets. If you're going to set up a 1 hour as an owner operator, $235,000 typically is the appropriate budget. If you're going to hire a manager day one, it's $320,000. So I absolutely make sure that people have the financial wherewithal to be set up for success. So I have, and I won't share names or locations, but I had an owner that we closed down last year. They were going to hire a manager. They wanted to keep their jobs until the 1 hour had scaled large enough that it would replace or exceed their current incomes. Hire a manager. They had the time to put in for what would be needed to oversee that individual. Everything was great. They decided, never doing this before, that they were going to outsmart the system. Instead of hiring that manager and high-fiving that we just saved, this salary, they thought, well, we'll just forward the calls to our cell phones and we'll be our own dispatchers. But they both had full-time jobs. Again, we talked about this earlier. This is a demand business. If someone calls and you do not pick up, they're going to call someone else. So now they're spending marketing dollars. When they get around to calling people back, they've already, moved on and contacted someone else. But they thought that they would just, be able to do that better. Unfortunately, even with all of our, warnings and trying to guide them, They wanted to do it their way. And eventually, that location closed. Technicians couldn't get in to get more inventory. Supply houses couldn't deliver equipment. The warehouse was always locked. No one was there. And customers were calling and then calling someone else that they could get an appointment with. So again, it's really was kind of self-sabotage, and it's unfortunate, but sometimes it happens, in any business.
Got it. And so, and I'm guessing they didn't pick up, it was going to the call center, but they didn't have enough technicians, or they didn't have enough material, or they didn't have something that was preventing those jobs from getting done.
No, they were bypassing the call center because they were routing it to their cell phones from the business office. So they weren't, nothing that we had in place was being utilized. It became more of a hobby, which this is not. This is not a hobby. It's a business that needs to be attended to appropriately. And, it was unfortunate. I never like to see, anyone not succeed, but, it happens, very infrequently, as you stated. Most owners go on to have multiple territories, but once in a while, it does occur.
Got it. So those real mavericks, right? And that's just franchising in general, right? Like that's just isn't for you. But I do want to talk about the manager piece, right, that you brought up, because for most people who have never owned a business, I rarely say, hey, just get a manager, because you have to learn business, and you have to learn hiring, and you have to learn all these other things on top of like what the business is, right? So like, have you seen people who have never owned a business before hire a manager and be successful?
Absolutely. I'll share a couple case studies. We had our conference, national conference in Dallas. It was last month. Again, this is not sign a lease, hire a manager, and disappear. I want people to be engaged. I want them to, build a solid foundation in order to effectively manage their manager. They should review the daily management reports. They need to approve budgets in a timely fashion. And at a minimum, go to the office once a month when our corporate team is in town training. Go to the office for that day, again, to learn, the KPIs for the brand, everything that they need to know. But this brand validates very well with owner operators and semi-absentee new owners. In fact, it's about a 50-50 split. I had our rookie of the year. He's in a mortgage broker in San Diego. No experience within the industry, hired a manager, single territory, 2 vehicles, finished up his first year. He was up to 9 vehicles and did $3 million in revenue. Wow. I had another individual in Milwaukee. He opened November 28th last year in the insurance industry. I hired a manager, no background in the industry. As of this past Tuesday, he's done just over $500,000 in revenue. So, it absolutely works.
Are these managers getting equity?
No, I mean, the owners can do whatever they would like, but I would advise against giving equity to someone, right from the get-go. Like, they're not a proven commodity. Now, they should have a bonus tied to their comp plan. If you're at or above goal, then everyone should be aligned towards the same common goals. But I do have owners later on that, maybe they built up 3, 4, 5 territories. They their manager wants to purchase one. Again, they're all designed to be, successful, self-sufficient as standalones, and they'll work with them and give them some equity as part of their comp plan that can go towards, purchasing, a territory from them, something like that. But I can't say that it's never happened, because they may have worked something out that I'm not aware of. But when people ask me, I advise against that. From the day one, to give someone a piece of your business it's not necessary.
Yeah, and I just asked that because, like, a principal operator for most franchises, they require that person to be a partner. So that's interesting that you guys don't. So you mentioned a mortgage broker, so they probably work from home, have a flexible schedule. Like, if I want to be a quote unquote semi-absentee, I hate that word, but if I want to keep my job and own this, what is my time requirements? What is my flexibility requirements to be able to be successful here?
Sure. So you need to, set aside 15 to 20 hours a week on top of your current job. every day you need to look at the daily management report. Now, it could be the lunch hour, it could be at the end of the day. Roy, when he finishes up work, he gets with his manager every day. Every day they check in where they are. He knows where his business stands, looking at his dashboard on a daily basis. When it's time to add another vehicle, start recruiting for another technician, there's never any stop and start. Everything they have momentum and they're keeping momentum. And when the corporate team is there, he's at the office. He's being part of the training that's going on that day, and just, again, continuing to learn about the industry and 1 hour in general.
Wow. That's very cool. Okay. So 320 for a person who wants something like that.
For their first territory. And then again, as I said, I let people start with 1 or 2. If they want to go, again, 235 for an owner operator, 320,000 for semi-absentee, as you stated. If they do decide to start with the second territory, it's not another 235 or 320. They wouldn't need an additional warehouse, another manager. What they will need for the second territory is 2 more vehicles, 2 more field technicians, and some additional marketing dollars. So the second territory, the budget would be $100,000.
Very cool. Okay. All right. And so as we're closing up here, can you talk about the future of the brand, right? Where do you guys want to go? What do you want to add? What upgrades do you want to make? Kind of what does the future look like?
Sure. So 1 hour overall, we have a lot of momentum. Software systems, everything updating all the time. Team is expanding. Currently, we're about a $500 million company, and I am tasked with growing that over the next 5 years to $1 billion company. So again, we're owned by private equity. 1 hour has 1 hour is about 25% of all the entire Authority Brands portfolio. So we're tasked with doubling the size of this company in the next 5 years, and we have all of the resources behind us in order to accomplish that goal. So if we continue, on the trajectory that we've been on, and our owners are doing well, ramping up very quickly, we're on track to meet that goal.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay. And then if someone's interested, right? So if someone's interested in this franchise, they should reach out to me. I'll check and see if their territory's available. If it's not, Authority Brands has a number of other cool brands. It's actually, I've seen a lot of 1 hour heating and air owners who also own a plumbing, your Ben Franklin or Mr. Sparky or one of these other brands, which is really cool. But yeah, so if anyone hears this or interested, reach out to me. I'll check to see if your territory is available or if one of these other ones are. But if they just want to learn about the industry in general, are there magazines, podcasts, YouTube channels, right? If they want to learn more about, hey, could I see myself in HVAC?
Sure. I mean, they can go on our webpage. 1 Hour Heating and Air is a great resource. I've done multiple podcasts on different topics over the year. If they Google 1 hour, they'll see me. They can listen in on some of those other podcasts. Those would be really great places to start. And even if someone isn't sure about getting into business for themselves, but they have some questions about this industry, they can also reach out to me. My team, Kimberly, we'd be happy just to provide some more industry insight. Again, it needs to be the right vehicle for someone, and it's a terrific opportunity, but it may not be for them. We'd be happy just to, have a conversation with them if they have some questions, and they don't have to be, at that point where, I'm ready to start a business in the next 30 days. We'd be happy to educate them.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. I learned a lot. Hopefully the listeners learned a lot. And then like I said, if you want to learn more about franchising in general, you want to learn more about funding options, you don't need the $230,000 in cash. There's a lot of funding options out there. Or if you just need a tool, tracerfranchising.com. We're launching a franchise research app. It's going to be free, and you can use it to go off on your own and do your own due diligence, or to use it in tandem with working with me. So I hope to hear from anyone soon. Michael, thanks again. I think this was an amazing interview, and this sounds like a phenomenal. There's a few other franchises that I would say can grow to $40 million in revenue. I don't think I hear that all the time.
No, thank you again for having me on your show today. And, looking forward to working with you and your clients in the future here.
Thanks, Michael.